Hi everyone, I'm Carol Keller, independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Illinois in the US, and I'm coming to you today with several alternatives to the May Paper Pumpkin Kit, which is called Celebrating in Color. It uses all of our wonderful new in colors that came out in the new annual catalog that also debuted this month, so I'm really excited to share the cards with you. If you are not a Paper Pumpkin subscriber and you're intrigued and want to find out more, please reach out to me. I would be happy to be your demonstrator. Let's get started. Here is this month's kit. Such a pretty box in Tahitian Tide. And the Stampin' spot is basic gray, which I was surprised. I thought it might be one of the new in colors, but it is basic gray. And the stamp set has mostly sentiments except this little, I'm not even sure what to call it, this little stamp with dots that we are going to use today. But you got happy and you, and then sentiments that match up with those. Some beautiful little matte adhesive dots, adhesive back dots. And tear and tape adhesive, which is the first time I'm pretty sure that this has come in the Paper Pumpkin Kit. And then here is, of course, the sneak peek to next month's Pick of the Crop. So it looks like some fruit and flower themed stamps, cards, etc. And then this just shows that the colors in this kit coordinate with the brand new in colors, which started this month in the new catalog. And we will be using some of the products that are new in the catalog that coordinate. And then, of course, the instructions. And as I say every month, always check on the back to make sure that you have everything. And guess what? Something is missing from my kit. These are the gift card holders, and I am missing the Sweet Sorbet gift card holders, so I will be calling Stampin' Up! To get those sent to me. So that is why you always check. I had everything else. I had the other 4 colors of the gift card holders, but not the Sweet Sorbet. So I will be calling Stampin' Up! So they can get those to me. And I apologize if my voice is a little bit off. I have had a terrible cold for the past couple of weeks, and I'm finally on the mend. So I'm still coughing, but I will be hopefully able to edit out all of the coughing, whatever is left here, because it is not fun. Again, they give you some alternatives. If you want to know how to put the kit together, you can use the QR code. And the cards, these are the cards. And I've got 4 alternatives today, but I'm actually going to be making this one just as it is and just altering this one a little bit. This one I am not showing today. This one I will show you how I altered, and then I have 3 others that I designed myself. So I'm going to put everything aside so that we can get started. I will show you first of all the cards that I designed. So this one is actually, let me pull that flyer back in. This one is a variation, a close variation of, well, I guess a variation of this. So this happened kind of by accident. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but let me show you all 4 of the cards. I was doing the circle theme, and that's how that one happened. And then I was doing the stripes. And so these are the alternatives that I'm going to show you how to make today. And then all I did for this card was add some stamping with that cute little stamp that I just showed you. So let me put the rest aside, and I think we will start with this one. Because I had an idea. The idea was really for these cards. I wanted to do circles in all 5 of the in colors. So I'm going to, again, pull those aside. And so I was using some of the products, obviously, mostly the envelopes, because you know me, I love to use the envelopes. And I'll show you kind of what's left. I'll show you what I did. So I was cutting circles out of the envelopes in some of the different in colors, but I saw that Starry Sky was available on this. So I said, well, I'll just use that. And, well, I did. So I cut out, as you see, several sizes of circle. There's actually, it's hard to tell, but there's a circle cut out underneath this one as well. So I used this for the Starry Sky, and I used the envelopes. I actually used one of the tags that is in Tahitian Tide, cut out circles from that, because my idea was, well, let me cut out 5 of each circle so then I can make 5 cards. I'll just change up, you know, which one. So that's what I did. I used these, and then what's missing? What's missing is Orchid, Oasis, and I think I used an envelope for that too. I just don't have it here. But then the bottom portion I cut into strips. And those are the strips that I used on this card. The Parakeet Party strips are already provided for one of the cards, and so the idea is to use all of that color, but I wanted to use all of them. So I cut strips from the envelopes, and the same thing, I used the Tahitian Tide envelope to cut those strips. So that's what I did. I cut 5 of each strip, and I cut 5 of each circle. So obviously you can make that 10 cards, 5 of the strip cards and 5 of the circle cards. So that was the idea, just to show you how to do it. And so, like I said, I used this piece, and I wanted to get that beautiful gold. So I was trying to, I just trying to use up as much of it as possible, and to get that the beautiful gold flecks in there. So I cut out 2 large ones, and then 2 small ones, and one that was kind of in the middle. I'm going to do it a little differently this time. I want only the large one here, and I'm going to keep the 2 small ones here, and then I'm going to do this size. And for this, I use the layering circles dies, which I forgot to say. Use the layering circles dies. So the smallest one, or the second smallest one for the holes, and then the 3rd smallest one for these 2, and the 4th smallest. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me grab the dies so that I can show you. Here are the dies. So I used, this is the 2nd smallest one, 3rd smallest, 4th smallest. Those are what I used to cut out. 2nd smallest, and then what I'm going to do this time, 3rd smallest, 4th smallest. And the reason I'm telling you like that is because that way you'll know exactly which ones to use. The very smallest die I used to cut these, the next smallest to cut this, and what's going to go here. And I also ended up cutting, and it's hard to tell, but this is actually a piece of pattern paper that was cut extra. And I'm thinking I won't have to do that this time. So I won't even explain to you why that was. Okay, so I am going to cut out my circles, and then I'm going to be right back. And I was actually wrong. I used the 5th largest one for this. It has to be bigger than the die cut that's going to go in the center, and it's hard to tell, but there's a little bit of a border where you can see the background paper. And then the 2nd and 3rd smallest, I'm going to lay them out this way, and then die cut them, and then do the same thing on the other side. So again, I will be right back. All right, and so here we go. Now again, the reason that I was so intentional about making both of these, or all of these, smaller than this one is I really wanted this to stand out, and I think it will a little more on this card than it does on this one. But it was just a happy accident to figure out that I could actually even use this. The reason that I decided to use it and make something fun is that I realized that one of the cards, or actually 2 that come in the kit, have the same outline along the bottom. So these are really meant to layer. And when I realized that, I wanted to use them together. And so that's why I decided to alter the card the way I did, because I had already cut the holes out, and I thought, all right, how can I use this? So I am going to fold this, whoops, and score it with my, or burnish it with my bone folder. But before we adhere it, of course, I have paper that's going underneath, pattern paper. And in this case, I am using the In Color Designer Series papers. So I will show you everything at the end that I used, but this is one of the sheets. I almost was going to use the flowers, but I felt like it was too busy. So for this one, I used the crosshatch piece, and this time I thought I would use the stripes. And I'm going to layer them right away, because there is a little piece here that shows. So I'm going to quickly use my paper snips to cut out that piece before we adhere everything, because it's much easier to do it that way. Perfect. The way I did it, I'm going to cut out just a smidge more, and it's just easier to do it before they're adhered together, which is not the way I did it the first time. The first time I did it after the fact, and it was just harder, so I think this will work. and no one's going to notice because it's going to be between the two layers. So there we go. So we are going to use Terran tape to adhere these since we have it. This is a wonderful adhesive and it's really easy to use. So I'm going to lay it across the top and across the bottom, although I think I'm going to do the bottom one in sections only because it is kind of wavy, for lack of a better word. And so we'll do it in sections. Maybe that'll work. Yes. I think that'll be okay. We'll move that adhesive a little bit. And we'll use a little bit on the sides. And I think that will be good. The easiest way that I found to take off the little strips of paper is to use my Take Your Pick tool, because you can get right between the adhesive and the paper. And so that's what I usually do. And here I'll show you how we're going to just move that adhesive just a little bit so it's out of the circle. Very easy to do. And so this piece is actually cut to 5.5 inches by 4, because that takes into account that this is a little shorter than a normal card. And I'm just going to layer those like that. I feel like the pattern paper is a smidge bigger than it needs to be, but that's okay. I think it will work. And then I'm going to layer this on my card front, but this time I'm going to use my multi-purpose liquid glue because I really want to make sure that it's exactly positioned where I want it, and this will give me some wiggle room to place it. So we want it placed so that it overlaps on the bottom and lines up, which it does. So there is our card front. And one thing I did do, which I want to caution you about, is I stamped on the inside and I put the card holder, but I put it close to the bottom, not thinking that it was going to show. So we are going to make sure we fix that mistake. So let's do some stamping. Or actually, we'll put that in first because that's what I did. So I have the Starry Sky gift card holder, so that obviously it matches. And you can do it opened. I did it that way the first time and it worked, but it might be a tad easier to close them a little bit. And we're going to grab our Terran tape again. And again, we're just going to lay it along those 3 sides that we folded in. And I will say, if I had burnished these, it would have made it a little bit easier. They would lie a little flatter, but that's okay. Again, pushing that adhesive off the edge. And we want to make sure it's not in the way of where our gift card is going to sit. We don't want it sticking in there. And now I'm just going to position this up a little bit. Whoops, let's show you. Up a little bit from the edge on the bottom, but then over to the left. And I'm thinking that will do it, yes. And then we just burnish it a little bit and we can put our gift card in there. And so then I just, as you saw earlier, stamped still in the center, and there's room to do that and still room to write a little bit of a note. So I'm going to grab my stamps. And here's a little tip for making sure that this stamp stays straight. Since it's longer, one of the benefits of photopolymer is that you can twist it and put it on your block that way if you wanted to. But I don't want to do that. I want to make sure it's straight. So if you just kind of lay it on your surface, pick it up with your block, then you can guarantee that it's straight. And I'm bringing in Starry Sky. We're doing tone on tone for this one. Ink it up. And so the inside is done. And then while we have the ink, we're going to grab the die cut that comes with the kit, and there are 4 of these. So the one card that I'm going to make exactly as it is in the kit, there are 2 for that, but there are 2 extras that come in the kit. So that's what I've used for these 2 cards. And the just for stamp is small, so I don't have to worry so much about it or about it bending. So I'm just going to put it on the block and stamp it here. And that's all the stamping for this card. And so the other thing I did though was die cut. Using those layering circles, I die cut some pieces from the Tea Boutique 6x6 Designer Series paper. And my thinking was, like I said, I wanted this to be smaller than the circle it's supposed to sit in. And the reason you can't see as much of the background and here is that I did bump it up with dimensionals, which I'm still going to do. And so for these, I cut them also smaller. So they are 1 circle size smaller than what I cut out of here. So the 2 smallest circles and then the 2 next smallest circles. Actually, this one's gonna go here and this here. And so I did bump all of them up with dimensionals. And there are mini dimensionals that come with the kit, but I'm actually gonna use my regular dimensionals for this. Just making sure to put enough on the back so that the middle doesn't sag. So probably a couple on the bigger ones and probably just 1 right in the center on the smaller ones. And I'll take the paper off and then we'll just simply place them where they go on the card, centering them in those circles. And then of course the center one, and for that I'll use probably 3. Again, just making sure that there's coverage all along the die cut so that it doesn't sag in the middle. And then we're also going to put some of the beautiful in color ribbon on, in this case, Starry Sky. And so all I did was make a loop, and I wanted a pretty big loop, but there's not that much room down here, so I estimated, how big I would need it. I think that will work. We can always trim it down if need be. Now I'm bringing in my glue dots, which did not come with the kit. I think that's a first. But of course you may have glue dots left over from a previous kit or just in your stash. So we'll put 1 in between and then 1 on the front. And I'm going to place this. And it's going to end up on the dimensional, but that's okay. Or maybe I'll move it over. Maybe we'll move it over a little bit. Let's see if that will work. It might be too late. All right, we're gonna leave it there. So it will help it stay on anyway. So I don't think it's going to be a problem. And then this we just center as well. And then last but not least, we have some bling in the form of our 20, 22, 24 in color matte decorative dots, which coordinate with the ones that come in the kit. So these are the ones that come in the kit, and what I found was that they're actually a different size from the ones that come here. They're in between the small ones and the large ones. So I haven't used them yet. I've been using these, but obviously any of them will work for these cards. Since I have these out, I'll use these. Again, grabbing my take your pick tool. And these are ombre, so obviously some are darker, some are lighter in each of the 5 in colors. So I'm going to use some more on the darker side. And I just put 1 here and then a couple of the smaller ones. I think we'll do it up here a little bit this time. And that is card number 1. Now the next 2 cards basically use similar layouts. So I will do both of them because I'm actually going to add something to this that I wanted to add when I first designed it, but I had cut this piece of designer series paper too small and I wasn't able to do it, or I just didn't think it would give the look that I wanted. So I am going to change that up for today. And I think we'll start with that one. I am changing up the colors just so that I can show you some of the different variations. This is obviously Parakeet Party, where this is Starry Sky. And I'm just using a card base from the kit. I did use some extra ones, some basic white, but I started off with what was in the kit. So I just found that was easier. And so this time I did cut the designer series paper to the size of the card front, so 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2. And I'm going to put that on with my multi-purpose liquid glue. I debated even using this side instead of the other one. There are so many choices, and this paper again is the In Color 6x6 designer series paper, where this one is actually the Tea Boutique 6x6 paper. So many choices. That Tea Boutique uses all of the In Colors. Just repositioning this a little bit. There we go. That is the beauty of the glue. And then my thought for this card was to put a little strip. I used the gold foil sheets and put little strips like this, but it didn't look right, I thought, with the border. So I am going to try it this time. And in a perfect world, I would have put some adhesive sheets on the back before I cut them out to make it a little easier, but I'm going to try using my multi-purpose liquid glue. You could also use your fine tip glue pen, because the problem is you don't want glue on this side because it will dull it. So I'm going to do my best to put just a thin bead of glue on the back. And I'm going to use my tweezers to try and position. I got a little bit of glue on there. See if I can use that. Got a little bit of glue here, but not too bad. And then do the same thing with this one. And again, use my tweezers just to avoid getting glue on my hands. And I was really looking forward to those added strips of gold, so I'm eager to see how they're going to look on this project. The next part is the hardest part of the card. So I decided, because I know another demonstrator did it too, to be brave and take my basic black Stampin' Write marker, the brush end, and basically write in cursive the word you so that it fits inside. I will tell you, I had a little bit of a hiccup here, but as you can see, I used that tag to cover it up. So I'm hoping that if that's the case, I can do it again. And being on camera is even more intimidating, but I am gonna do my best. Yep, I got a hiccup right there. Very hard to do this on camera. So I can tell you my tag is going to go there, and I think I'm going to try my best to fix my shakiness at the beginning here. I think that's better. And again, you know, it's not perfect, but it's better, I think, than having it not be there and it making it harder to read. So we'll put that aside. And then I just laid out my die cuts that I did, and switching the way like I didn't want them all going in the same direction, so I changed that up a little bit. And I did this. I think we'll do it this way, get some of that darker in there, and then this one. And then you'll notice that I have some gold here and here. And I did that with my Versamark and that wonderful little stamp that comes in the kit. So here's how I did it. I have that little stamp and my Versamark. And there are already some gold dots on the center one, so I decided to add some to the two end ones. You could do all 5 if you wanted. So all I did was stamp on both of those, and I know it's very hard to see, but trust me, the Versamark ink is there. And I'm gonna bring in my gold embossing powder, which is in a bag because the container broke, but it actually kind of works nicely because I can just dip the end in here and get the powder on. You always want to flick off the excess. Do the same thing with this one. Little bit of excess there that I want to get off. So I've got a little paintbrush that I can use because otherwise that will melt and I don't want it there. So I can use that to get it off. And so now I'm going to grab my tweezers again and my heat tool and heat it until it melts. Just takes a few seconds. Just be careful not to have it too close to your work surface. And it's as easy as that. And now we're going to adhere everything, and I'm just going to use my Stampin' Seal for that. And I'm going to start with the center one just because I find that to be the easiest to make sure everything is pretty centered. And then for the word you, I again just use my Stampin' Seal. Could also use that wonderful tear and tape. And then now if you want to put your gift card holder, I would say now is the time to do it. So I'm going to bring that in and put my tear and tape on and be right back. And I've already put the tear and tape on and taken the paper backing off. And so I'm just going to center this on the left-hand side, which gives me room to write on the other side. Again, just burnishing it. And then just like the other one, we will put a sentiment on the inside as well. So I'm going to use the same one that I used for the other card, to celebrate your day. And we'll do this one in Orchid Oasis. And the same thing on the front, we are going to stamp that just for, and we're going to strategically place it to cover up the little mistake. And there are lots of tags that come in the kit, so I just used one of those. It's a very small stamp that says just for, so I'm going to do it over near the flag end and then cut it down. Because I don't want it this large. I just want it a little small tag. And this I am going to bump up with the mini dimensionals. If you wanted to, you could also add ribbon. And this time I'm just going to move it down here, again covering my mistake. No one will be the wiser. And we'll add some bling again, bringing back those matte adhesive dots. All right, and there we have card number 2. The next card is very similar. I used a different sentiment from the kit, and I used this time the ombre in color glitter paper, or excuse me, glimmer paper. And I'm going to use a different one this time as well. I have a white card base from the kit and the happy and my 5 circles that I already showed you how to cut previously. And then this time we'll use Tahitian Tide from the glimmer paper, the in color glimmer paper. Again, putting that on with the multi-purpose liquid glue. And this time, because there was gold on already 2 of the die cuts, I just put one on the Tahitian Tide, and I'm going to do that again. And I think this time we'll do it this way. So I'm going to do that and be right back. And I will say, which I noticed as I was doing this one, I usually do my embossing away from my table because I did end up one time, this is laminated, my grid paper is laminated, and one time I melted it because I did it too close. So when I do my embossing, my heat embossing, I do it away from my table. Just a word of advice. All right, so now again, I'm just going to layer these just as I did before with my Stampin' Seal. And this one, this die cut, I forgot to say, comes from this, which is going to be used for another card. And this is the one that I'm going to end up making up just like it is in the kit. But of course I didn't want it to go to waste, so I used that. That was, I think, what sparked my interest in doing the circles. And for the happy, I did bump this up with the mini dimensionals, basically putting them wherever at the edges and wherever in the middle I wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to sag. So I'm going to finish that and take the paper off and be right back. And just as a little FYI, I did cut one of the dimensionals in half, the minis, and put them here because a regular size one was too big. And then I decided to put it at an angle, sort of having it be underlined by the gold there. And we're just going to do a little bit of stamping, happy, and then to celebrate your day. And we're going to do it this time in Tahitian Tide. And so I'm bringing back in the labels from the kit. And this one's really long, and I don't want it to be that long. I just want it to be the size of my sentiment. So I'm going to cut it down after I stamp it. And I'll show you how I did that. So I'm going to bring in my trimmer and cut it a little shorter. And then I'm going to use this as a guide as to where to snip it. I'm not sure how well you can see it on camera, how they overlap, but I'm just basically going inside the lines of that flag. You could also, and actually it looks like I missed the middle here a little bit, you could also just eyeball it and cut a line down the center. And then cut from each side. That's another way to do it, and I actually did that initially. And so this I'm just going to put on with my Stampin' Seal. And then of course bling, but I will also, I'm not going to do it on camera, but I also will use the Tahitian Tide card holder, gift card holder, and put that on here. And I probably will take another stamp set that says happy birthday and put it there on the inside. You could also, though, with the way the sentiment is happy to celebrate your day, it could be happy retirement, congratulations, best wishes, any of that. So any of those would work. But again, I'm going to just bring in my bling then for a finishing touch. And this time I used more of them. And so there we have the next card. This card I had a lot of fun with, but it actually took a few tries to get what I wanted. I knew I wanted to use an embossing folder for the background, and then when I made it the first time, I forgot it. So I had to take everything up, which was quite challenging, but I did it, it worked. But don't make my mistake. Basically what I did was take the card base and run it through the top half through my embossing folder. For this one, I used the Cascading Ruffles embossing folder, but you can't really tell. So I used painted textures for this one because I don't think it matters on the front, but I will say on the inside, look at how pretty that looks. And this one is just the back side of the painted textures. And I used, my idea again was from the strips that came from the kit. So I just pulled one that had the dots on it already embossed. And then, like I said earlier, I cut strips from the envelopes for the other 4. And just as I did with the other cards, I'm going to emboss some gold dots. I'm going to kind of decide here how I want them to be set up, probably like this. Or maybe like that. And then I'm going to do some embossing with that same stamp that we used earlier. So I'm going to do that and be right back. But I will say a word to the wise. I did it sort of in a cross section because my first one had the embossing of the dots right in the center, but it was really hard to see. So I am going to do a little bit more on these than I did on the first ones, now that I know that I'm going to put the happy up here. So I'm going to do that and I will be right back. All right, so now I have embossed all of them, and I actually even added a little embossing to here, to this one, because I wanted it to be a little bit lower. And then I got a tip from watching Sarah's video. Sarah is our CEO, and she was working with the kit and showing how to line these up to get them so that they're centered on here. And so that's what I did with this card. I'm going to do something a little different on this one just to show you an option, but all she did was lay the grid out, centered where she wanted it, and then as you put each one in, you just fit them right in the spot there where they go, and then they line up pretty well. It does still take a little bit of finagling to make sure they're straight. So if you don't want to worry about that, and she showed this also, was to kind of put them like that, every kind of which way, and not worry about them being lined up perfectly. So I think I'm going to do that this time. It makes it a little more whimsical, a little more fun. And because we have the textured background, I am going to use my multi-purpose liquid glue to adhere these. And I'm starting with the center one, just to kind of make them even. And this one I am going to put straight up and down, but the other ones I'm going to turn different ways. And once you've got all of them on there, just give them a good press to help that glue to adhere to all the little nooks and crannies of having the texture on the card front. And now for the word happy, that comes from the set, but it was so plain when I first put it on there. I thought, oh, I don't know if I like that. So, oh, and I did add a strip of gold, and actually I was thinking I wanted to adhere it underneath this time. Oh, that's okay, I'm not going to. But if you want to, I was thinking this would go underneath to be a little bit more subtle, and I forgot to do it again. Oh well, nobody will be the wiser, right? So I'm gonna put a strip of glue on there as well. Grab my tweezers. Tweezers are new for me, so I am not the best at them just yet. And we're going to center this. Again, giving that glue a couple seconds to adhere. And so for the happy, I decided that I wanted to use my colored pencils because I don't have all the blends yet. I probably would have tried blends, but I don't have all of the in colors yet, sadly. So I decided to use my colored pencils. And you might be thinking, well, Carol, we don't have colored pencils in the in colors, and that is very true. So I used what I thought was close to the colors, and I think it worked out pretty well. I mostly used set 2, or I used actually all of the colored pencils I used came from set 2, but I do have an idea for you for one of the colors, which I will explain. But basically I used Granny Apple Green, Flirty Flamingo, Gorgeous Grape, Night of Navy, and Balmy Blue. And those were the colors that were closest to what I had here, especially because for the Sweet Sorbet, I went with the pink because it was so light. If you are using a strip that's really darker, I would recommend using Real Red, which comes from the set 1 of the watercolor pencils. But I was able to do set 2. I'm not going to color the whole thing on camera, but I will show you my process. So originally, and you'll laugh at this too, we all make mistakes, even demonstrators. Originally, I was following the pattern that I had here. I had the Sorbet and then the Orchid, so I used the Gorgeous Grape, and then the Parakeet Party, so I used the Granny Apple Green, etc. And then when I put everything together, I realized it was upside down. So I turned it all around. Again, I made it work. This poor card has been through a lot, but the recipient luckily will not know that. So you have the option of following the color pattern as you have it or changing it up. And I think I'm actually going to do the opposite. I like that better. So I am going to stick with the color palette that I had, which means using the Balmy Blue here. So again, I'm not going to color in all of them, but I'm just going to show you what I did on the Y. We'll do that, and then I'll do the rest off camera. But I colored it in with my watercolor pencil. And after I colored all of them, I used my blender pen to just blend the colors a little bit. So again, this isn't turquoise, it's definitely blue, but I think especially having the colors opposite to where they are on the card, it makes it a little less obvious. And I just thought it looked so much better colored than it did plain. So you can leave it plain if you want, if you can't match the colors exactly. I would try though the blender or the blends to see if those will work if you have the in colors, because then they would match for sure. I'm going to color the rest off camera and be right back. And a little tip too that I forgot to mention, when you're using your blender pens, once you finish with one color, just wipe it a few times on your grid paper until it is clear and the color is off, and then you can switch colors with ease. And then for the happy, I also bumped it up with some dimensionals. So I'm going to do that and be right back. For the happy, I did use a combination of the large and small dimensionals based on where the space was. And then I'm just going to put it at an angle and leaving room on the side for ribbon. And let me show you how I did the ribbon. It was really fun. I just took 3 colors. I took the Sweet Sorbet, the Orchid Oasis, and the Tahitian Tide. So I thought 3 was probably plenty. And whoops, I made sure the ends were the same length, which they are not right now. And I like to tie ribbon right off the roll anyway because it is less waste that way. So I just grabbed the 3 of them, made my loop, tied a bow, and then I always play with it a little bit to get it to the size I want, which that looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit bigger. Well, that's probably pretty good. Maybe a tiny bit bigger. And then we'll snip the ends and make these a little shorter. So there's, again, not too much waste. And then to attach it, I use glue dots. I think I'm going to put it up here this time. There wasn't really room, so that was why I put it on the side, but it looks like it'll work up there. So I'm going to grab my glue dots. I always put one behind the center, and you can squeeze it and make it a little smaller if you need to. And I always try to put some behind the loops or the ends so that it keeps them in place so that it doesn't come apart. So I usually use 3 glue dots at least. And in this case, I want to bring those tails down a little bit. A little bit like that. So I'm going to stick another glue dot in there, just kind of putting it on my fingernail. And slipping it underneath where I want those tails to stay. And then you can kind of train it like that. And I think that looks good. So I'm going to leave it like that. I could do the same thing with the other side, but I think that's okay. And so that's it. And if you have trouble tying, you know, the good thing is you can untie and retie till you get it right. So I really do like doing that. And the more you do it, the easier it gets, of course. So now we're going to do a little bit of stamping. We're going to stamp happy. We have got happy. We're going to stamp to have you in my life. And I am going to use the Tahitian tide again. So we'll bring back those labels from the kit. And the same thing, I need a longer one. So I'm just going to do it at one end because I don't want it that long. And I'll show you the other way to cut the tail, if you don't mind that it's not exact. I used my trimmer to get a straight line, leaving a little more room on the right than I wanted than is on the left. And I'm going to save that tail to use for another card. And then I'm going to take my snips. And this is what I was explaining before. You just cut a little snip in the center, and then you go from each end to that center, and that's how you get an even one every time. And no one is the wiser that it didn't come that way. I'm going to use my Stampin' Seal and position this down here. I think this way this time. I'll leave a little bit on the end. And then, of course, last but not least, our bling. Draw our eye around the card, and there it is. So you can, like I said, make them all purposely cattywampus, so that you don't have to worry about making them straight. I think I actually do like them straighter, but again, personal preference. And if you don't want to worry about lining them up exactly, this is the way to go for sure. But that is our next card. And here's the last card for today. So this basically follows mostly the design that is in the kit. I added a little bit to it, and I changed where I put the sentiment because I wanted a different one. This says, you can do anything and I want it just for you. Just using the kind of gift card holder idea. So I have the die cut that I took the U out of before that we used for the front, and the pre-made card front, or card base, I should say. And so we're supposed to just put it on first, but before we do that, I'm going to do some stamping. I did this after the fact, but I don't like doing it that way. So I'm going to take that wonderful little stamp again. We've gotten so much use out of it. I love it. And I decided to use Starry Sky. I think this time we will try Orchid Oasis, just for it to be a little bit different. And so I'm going to take this, and I will say you have to notice that if you notice it's silver, or if you notice it's gold along the edge, well, the ink is not going to stick to that. So I'm going to start just beyond that. Maybe about here. And if it does get on there, just wait till everything dries and you can wipe it off. And then we're going to move it up in a line like this because I want it to go underneath. Maybe even one more. Can't decide how I want to stamp it with that one already there. All right, and then same thing on the other end. We sort of project where it's going to go and continue it on to the edge. And just turning it every time. And then while we have the ink out, we're going to do the tag. So I'm just using the scrap that I just cut out for the just for, and in this case I am centering it and using the whole thing. You could also cut it down if you wanted to, and if you wanted a smaller one. And I'm just centering it on the piece that I have, the label that I have. And then for the inside, I think I would do the same thing that I did on the earlier ones and stamp to celebrate your day. So I'm not going to do that right now. And again, for this one, I used the Sweet Sorbet, but I think I'm going to change it up. I think I'm going to use the Orchid Oasis this time for some contrast. And just like I did on the earlier card, I'm just going to make a loop that's going to go around that label. And bringing in my glue dots. And then we're going to put some mini dimensionals on the back. Whoops, I guess we have to put that down first, don't we? Forgot about that. So this I'm going to use the tear and tape for, just as it shows in the directions. And we center it over the word you. And now we put our tag on. And I think I'm going to put it straight this time. And then I think we can also add some bling to this one. And this time we'll just use the colors, the two colors. And that is it. That is our last card for today. I will bring them all in so you can see them again. I think we'll just, these were the same, so I'll just bring in one. And the Glimmer cards. We got a lot accomplished today. So I think I'll just show one of those as well since they're both the same. But lots of options for papers. Let me show you what I use too. So I take these out of the way. Let me show you everything that I use that didn't come with the kit. the Painted Textures embossing folder or the Cascading Ruffles embossing folder. This one's new in the catalog. And the 6x6 in color Glimmer papers. This is what they look like, all with that beautiful ombre. Comes in all 5 of the in colors. This is the Tea Boutique Designer Series paper. There are 12 different designs, or actually 24. There are 12 on each side, I should say. And it coordinates with a whole suite of products, but uses the wonderful in colors. There are the back sides, which of course we used one of those. And last but not least, I used the 6x6 in color designer series paper for the 2022-2024 in colors. Here, let's do it this way so you can see. There are 4 designs in the 5 in colors. Here are, 2 of them. And then here are the other ones. And again, we used some of these today. So lots of options for coordinating in color products that come, or that you can purchase in addition to the kit, so you can make tons of cards. I hope I showed you a way to use up lots of the components of the kit. The only thing that I didn't use of the die cuts was the best wishes, and mostly just because I don't need a wedding card or that kind of card right now. And I wanted to make up cards that I would be able to use right away. But there are still tags that you can use. When you're using up the rest of your circles, if you do the same thing that I did, there are several more cards that you can make with the circles and the stripes, and there are more tags. I didn't use any of the in color matte dots that came with the kit, so you could use those up as well. So lots of cards that you can really make if you just use a few extra products, a few more card bases and things like that. So I hope you enjoyed them. Give me some love in the comments if you did. Again, as I always say, because I mean it from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate you watching, coming back each month to see my designs and leaving me some love in the comments. Please stick around and look at some of the other videos I have. I do other cards, scrapbook pages, home decor items. I have some tips and techniques. And if you like what you see, also please subscribe to my channel by clicking the button. And if you click on the bell, then you'll be notified when I post new videos every month. I do try to get those paper pumpkin videos out as soon as I can after I receive the kit. Unfortunately, I was sick all week, so as you can tell by my gravelly voice, so this one's a little later than normal, but I do try to have it out as soon as I can, depending on what's going on with me with the rest of my life. So come back every month to see those, and stick around and check out some of my other videos. Thanks so much for watching, and happy stamping.